Alrighty, we're going to get started for the meeting tonight. It's going to be an informal meeting, kind of go over what we're going to go over and who's going to be speaking. And wireless mic, if you have a question, just wait for the mic because this is televised tonight also. So we want to make sure that everybody can hear the questions. First thing I'm going to do is Mayor Gander is going to have a few words, then I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Emery. He'll go over the possible jurisdictional transfer of Business Highway 2 to the City of East Grand Forks. So it's an informal meeting, it's not a formal public hearing. So if you do have a question, just raise your hand, we'll bring the wireless mic to you and just ask your question. But I'll hand it off to Mayor Gander first. She has something to read.
Cool. This is just a technicality, but it was a recommendation we got from Mr. Gallstead. I would like to disclose information relevant to the discussion of the possible jurisdictional transfer of Business Highway 2 to the City of East Grand Forks. I'm a partner in Morgan Gander LLC that owns a storage building off of Business Highway 2 East. This business is located at 1711 Business Highway 2, has no frontage on Business 2, but would be affected by any special assessments connected to that project, Business Highway 2. Consequently, my participation in this discussion is only as a property owner, not as mayor. Number 3, I will not attempt to influence other city council members or city staff in this decision. And 4, I would also like to put on record that I will not participate in the decision-making process by voting to break a tie or in any other fashion, nor will I use my veto authority following the council decision. Thanks, Mr. President.
Yes, sir. Mr. Murphy.
Yeah. Just one thing I just wanted to clarify. So since this is an informal meeting after our city engineer and MnDOT have had their opportunity to present what this jurisdictional transfer would mean, we will then answer any questions, and after that we will break into a more of an open house type forum where you can come up and view the maps, ask the engineer, MnDOT, or anybody any questions that you might have. So there will be some time at the end of the presentation for you to come up and ask any questions that you might like as well.
Well, good evening, everyone. Appreciate everyone taking time tonight to come out. Again, there's some introductions, I guess, for those of you that don't know me. Again, I'm Steve Emery, city engineer for the City of East Grand Forks. We do have with us here tonight a couple representatives from MnDOT. We got Lou Tassa, our district state aid engineer, and then we got JT Anderson, transportation district engineer, works out of Crookston. So just to kind of give you a little bit of history, background. The city was first approached by MnDOT in probably about March or April of this year about the potential to do the jurisdictional transfer. And so what basically that transfer would include, and I do have handouts in the back, but basically what that would include, which you can see on the map here, is the City of East Grand Forks would take over Business Highway 2 from Demers and 4th, which is kind of right by Up North Pizza. So they would take over Business Highway 2 from there all the way out to Highway 2. And then MnDOT would take over Demers Avenue, again from 4th and Demers all the way to Highway 2. So basically what the map that we're showing, that represents if the transfer went through, what the ownership would be. So and again, we've had numerous discussions through city council meetings, city work session meetings, meetings with MnDOT and staff, kind of in regards to this transfer. And I think right now, I think the council is kind of on the fence. So again, that's the intent of tonight's public hearing, is to kind of gather input from you, the residents and businesses along the corridor. That ultimately would be affected, by this transfer if it did take place. So I guess, the biggest question is, why is MnDOT requesting this transfer? And I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to JT to give a little bit of background.
So MnDOT, I don't remember in the last 5 to 10 years, I suppose, they've put away some money to engage locals in this discussion about jurisdictional transfers. And so we look at, from a system perspective, which roads make more sense to have on the trunk highway system and which roads make more sense to be local. So in looking at a system, Demers Avenue from 220 down to the Sorley Bridge is a principal arterial, and it carries about 2 to 3 times the traffic that Business 2B does. And so from a system, trunk highway system, and actually as it goes into North Dakota, that's actually part of the state highway system in North Dakota as well. So it aligns our system with their system better. It functions more as a trunk highway. So we're looking at it from that standpoint that it makes sense from a system to have that on our system and have 2B on the local system. And so now we have some money available that we can engage the communities and have the conversation. And essentially that's why we're here, to have the conversation and see if there's any interest in the community in taking that over and having that managed as a local road and having Demers manage as a trunk highway system. Essentially it.
Thank you, JT. So I guess with any, exchange, there's advantages, disadvantages, which we all kind of recognize. So kind of go through some of those. Some of the advantages is on a yearly basis, the city receives state aid allocation dollars to help maintain not only their state aid system, but they also do receive 25% of those funds go into a maintenance pool, which the city can use on local streets too. So with the increase in state aid mileage of about 1.6 miles, the city would generate about $38,000 in additional in state aid dollars, which equates, it don't seem like a lot, but over a 20-year period, you're looking at about $750,000 that, again, the city could use those dollars on Business Highway 2, or they could use those dollars on their state aid system. Another advantage is the entire corridor could be totally reconstructed in the next 2 to 5 years and paid for by MnDOT. Current reconstruction estimates, just based on initial scope of the project, we're looking at probably about a $10.5 million project. Again, if the city is to take it over, they'll have control of Business Highway 2 to control timing for maintenance projects in the future. And then the turnback agreement with MnDOT could be written in a way that would allow the city to utilize the funds received from MnDOT towards other transportation needs. If the city decided, at this time we don't want to totally reconstruct it, MnDOT would, essentially give the city, let's say, the $10.5 million, which they could utilize on, other state aid projects. So some of the disadvantages, that we know of: increased maintenance costs for city staff with additional snow plowing, sanding, crack sealing, pothole repairs, utility maintenance. So there is, anytime we increase our mileage, there's more maintenance for the city. One of the big ones that I'm sure you all are aware of is there is potential for future assessments associated with a jurisdictional transfer. Typically in the past, even on our state aid system, maintenance type projects, whether it's mill and overlay seal coat, the city has been assessing 100% of those costs. If we were to look at a full reconstruction project, the city's policy right now is to assess 30% of full reconstruction type projects. So I guess kind of moving forward a little bit is, if the project was to move forward, again, we have a couple different options. Again, like I mentioned, the city and MnDOT could enter into an agreement. We could do full reconstruction of the entire corridor, and MnDOT would pay for that project. Again, we got to totally agree on a scope of work, but option 2 is, we would come up with an estimated cost. Like I said, right now we're at about $10.5 million. If the city chose not to totally reconstruct Business Highway 2 at this time, MnDOT would basically cut a check, the way I understand it, to the city, where again the city could utilize those funds for any other needs they may have on their state aid system. Or again, as always, again, the option is to do nothing. So I guess, if the city chooses to do nothing, and that's one question I have even for JT is, what can the, businesses, residents, I guess, what can they expect within the next say 5 to 10 years for projects if this is not to move forward.
Yeah, for us, all we would probably do is a little overlay on the segment, similar to what we saw last time we informed.
Yep.
All we'd be looking at in that segment would be a mill and overlay. I think it's similar to what we did last time we were out there. I think last time we didn't do the shoulders. We'd probably have to address the shoulders this time when we went out there. But I was just talking before the meeting. I'm not sure if that's even in our 10-year plan right now. We may have it. It's not in our STIP, which is our 4-year plan, so it'd be outside of 2023. So it'd be 24 or later before we got to it. But I'm not even sure it's in that 10-year plan. So I'd have to check on that. But whatever it is, it'd be a mill and overlay, and maybe just some drainage issues and things like that. It'd be a surface repair more or less. So.
Okay. So I guess with that, I think we'll just kind of turn it over to see if anyone has any questions, concerns. Again, that's kind of the intent of tonight's meeting, is just to gather input from you guys, which will ultimately help the city in deciding too, which direction we want to go with this. So, you get it to work, David?
It's working? Can you hear me? Well, it's because it's being recorded as well.
You want to just come up with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know what happened, but it was working, but now it's...
I guess if you do have a question, if you want to come up to the podium and ask a question, your question might help, answer some questions that we've had in the past, and, maybe there'll be some new questions that we didn't think of going forward, and that's why we wanted to make sure we got with everybody to see, what's out there, what questions you might have concerning us doing this and not doing it, and just to make sure we're doing the right thing, because it does involve a lot of people from Fourth all the way out to Highway 2 there. So if you do want to come forward and ask your question, please come forward.
Trent Peabody, president of Lumber Mart. This project is one of the typical projects that we've seen over the years that have been proposed to our businesses that are out on business too. I wrote up a lot of notes, but there's a long history of discussion of improvements to US 2. As recent as improvements to the intersection of Business 2 and US Highway 2, which we sat on committee. The committee made recommendations, and the state has gone against what the recommendations were with going to an R cut. I don't have any faith in the state and the system that we have going here, because promises have been made and passed and never been lived up to. Promises have been made to generations of business. We have businesses out there that are first, second, third, and fourth generations. So we have a lot of history. We've had a lot of promises made, road improvements, curb and gutter, street lights, sewer and water. None of it has ever came to fruition. The road out there is a big road. You're looking at turning over a lot of miles, the state is, to the city. The city is better suited to maintain that road than the state of Minnesota. The city is more capable in the decision making than the state of Minnesota. The state of Minnesota is very interested in getting that road turned away because of the maintenance that's involved with it. The accident mitigation that they were proposing to us down at the intersection of 2 and Highway 2, they didn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. The state of Minnesota's recommendation was close Business 2. Shut it down in front of Todd's Trailer Sales, Bert's Truck Equipment. Make it a cul-de-sac. That'll take care of the problem. Again, we as business owners had to fight for that. Now, it's changed again. You're talking about doing road improvements. I can see the council members here wringing their hands at $10 million cash, and we can go use that money elsewhere. Then when the point in time comes to repair that road, we're sorry, we don't have the monies that was spent elsewhere. You can see that happening. These promises have been made before, and they've been broken. There's lots of history that go along with that. You talk about a project that they're doing, not knowing for sure which R-cut they're doing. They have two proposals, one for $1.2 million and another one for $0.7 million. When all we asked was to have some shoulder improvement and things done, which again, their estimates we felt were high, but at $1.1 million for turn lane improvements, or to go for the big daddy, and that was $3.3 million to improve the westbound traffic and soften the corner and purchase some farmland onto the interior corner of US 2. The state said they didn't have the money. But we sat in conversations where there was overpasses, there was all kinds of different things thrown out. We were going to get street lights to improve the safety at the intersection. We got 2 street lights. They were going to improve the shoulders by putting some temporary asphalt down to help prevent mediation from drive-offs and accidents and rear-ending. Never happened. If you take the time to drive to Business 2, as I do every day multiple times, there's more than just a mill and overlay. I have culverts that run underneath the road in front of my business. I called the state to tell them that we had a hole in the highway. Their simple fix to the hole was to come out, pour sand in it where the culvert was, put a piece of tar over the top and call it good. Drive along. It's no different than being in the city and looking where our water hookups are. And you have the dip in the street. Look where the dips in the shoulder of the roads are. That's where all the culverts are tying across and they're settling. The businesses that are out there have been out there for a long time. We were the original industrial park for East Grand Forks. And we've been treated as such, as an industrial park. And the businesses that we have out there are industrial type. To have the faith in the city to do the right thing in repairing a road when we need the roads repaired, improving our drainage, improving our lighting, hasn't happened. So the majority of us business owners are very skeptical as far as what you're going to be able to do or not do. You have a project that you're talking about assessing at a later date. Very similar to a project that the city of Grand Forks did called Demers Avenue that runs parallel to a large company called Burlington Northern and their switch yard. Go back and look at how the city of Grand Forks and Burlington Northern got along and when they went to do the assessments on that. Burlington Northern said, no way, no how. What runs parallel to Business 2? Burlington Northern's railroad track. You're going to assess the railroad? You have a large processor that's very important to our community known as American Crystal Sugar Company. Huge frontage. What are they going to pay for assessments? The city has land along that road. The mayor is worried about excluding himself from where his business is located at. I don't know if he'll jump over and go to where the city shop is and go to a business like Portamix and a crushed gravel and the rest of the railroad property. How are you going to assess this when the point in time comes that that road has to be repaved? There's lots of questions, more questions than there are answers, I feel. And we're not getting them addressed. The state has got a path that they're chosen. We were told when they patched the holes in front of our lumber business that the road was going to get mill and overlaid in like 2 years. That was 4 years ago. I have culverts that are pushing up when you pull into my business. I can't fix the culvert because that's the state's culvert. I can't get the drainage in front of my business because that's the state's ditch. I can't touch those things. Any business owner that's along there has those issues. I can speak for my business. We're not in favor of it. Let the state keep the road, the city keep their road that they have. The city's always had that road from the Sorley Bridge. The state has, excuse me, from the Sorley Bridge out to US Highway 2. The city took the slight turn back from the Sorley Bridge to Northland Cabinetry to that intersection by Red River Potato Company for snow removal and maintenance, but it's still state aid road. So what changes? The state picks up 4 blocks and the city picks up 3 miles. Can't afford it, guys. Can't afford it. Not trying to chastise anyone. I'm just saying that we've had a lot of promises made. We did a study on that intersection, and there was lots of information that came out on there. During the beet harvest, simply calculated out from September to October, there's 4,500 heavy commercial traffic movements on that road a day, bringing product into American Crystal Sugar Company. The weight of those vehicles, the maintenance of that road, the city knows better how to engineer that and maintain that versus the state of Minnesota? I don't think so. We in essence have 2 harvests. That's the initial harvest. We have a second harvest that runs all winter long until March with Trans Systems trucks running on that road and the wear and tear. Is the city going to grade that road every day when it's sloppy, wet, and mud during that short window of time? The state has a hard time keeping up with it. It's a safety hazard. But it's all part of the fall process. It's all part of the harvest season, and we tolerate it. But how's the city going to do a better job than the state's doing on that? How's the city going to afford that? It's more than just snow removal. It's more than just sweeping the streets. There's lots of promises. I feel that right now, our road is a business highway. We have no curb or gutter. Our speed limit is 50 miles an hour. We have no street lighting, unless you count our parking lot lights. We have ditches in front of our businesses that don't drain, with tall grass and cattails. And many have gravel roads that lead to their front doors of their operations. We have a railroad line that runs by many of our locations. And we have a flood protection while others are outside its walls. We have no city water. We are rural. We have no sanitary sewer. We have septics. We have very few things that our fellow business owners enjoy that are within the city limits of East Grand Forks. But wait, we are in the city limits too, are we not? Simple things that you take for granted. Many of us businesses out there just recently had the opportunity to get Midco Communications to come in and hook us up to a fancy thing called the internet. We couldn't get it out there because of one key business in the community didn't want to let it go past because they didn't need it, so Midco didn't see the need to run out there. We as business owners had to pay an exuberant amount and an additional amount to bring it in. But only after we did research to find out that there was 2 other business owners that are outside the city limits that brought it in over the Mallory Bridge, pushed it under the railroad, pushed it under the highway to get to their businesses. Simple things that we take for granted that we don't have out there. Again, is the city going to improve that for us when you take over the road? Or is it going to be another basket of empty promises? I truly feel that there's a reason behind the state wanting to give this back, and the state knows that the expenses are far great. The state analyzes everything, if I'm not mistaken, in a 20-year program, a 10-year program?
We have 10-year, we have a 20-year program as well.
On what the cost rate of return is?
We just go by, just based basically a need system, a system need, and we go on, we use multimodal too, so we have targets for each different category that we put out there over 20 years.
Okay.
When you're down 10 years, then you're down 4 again.
Well, from the committee that we sat on, looking at what that intersection was, everything was based off a 20-year program is what they were proposing to us as far as what the rate of return was. So everything is a little different. It changes depending upon who you talk to, what the communication is going to be, what we're going to be given or what we're not going to be given. I'm a second generation. I have sons that are coming in that are third. And I would suspect that we'll still be talking about these things as the time comes up, because we do not make a final decision on anything. I don't want to be talking about it anymore. I would just say let the state keep the road. That's my opinion.
Thank you, sir.
We do have this working now. Testing.
Did you just turn it off?
Just tap it. When it turns green, it's on.
Anybody else, if anybody else has anything, come up and use the mic up here if they want. Ask some questions. If you want to just come up and ask some questions too up here, feel free. Wayne, if you want.
Hello, good evening. Wayne Gregoire. I'm with Bert's Truck Equipment in East Grand Forks. Family-owned business here in East Grand Forks since 1939. Been out. The business was brought out to Business Highway 2, I believe, in the late 50s in that area. We've been in business for 80 years. I've been personally involved with the business for well over 43 years. Been to many of these meetings. It seems like I don't know if the state likes to get our dander up or what it might be, but you talk about maintenance issues. Well, that's your job. You people have a job to maintain your state roads. Okay, now, if you can't find the funds to do it, then you may have to do other things internally to make that happen. Maybe that's the avenue that you may have to approach, is look at your organization internally. Maybe there's too much, too many people, and now it's affecting your lane miles. You're trying to justify jobs and everything else, and now it's starting to affect your maintenance. There's more employees, so you got less money to look at maintenance issues. That could possibly be a deal. Now, here's one suggestion that I would have. It seems like the state has different pockets within their realm, and one of them is they use the term historical. And you just finished up a big project right over here on the Kennedy Bridge, deeming it a historical bridge. Sorely the same thing. Historical came out of a different fund, a different pot. Well, I'm going to tell you that Highway 2, or Business Highway 2, is historical. It was and is the main entrance into the city of East Grand Forks and the south end of Grand Forks. It's a major how do I want to say it? It's a thoroughfare that has been there for a long time. Maybe let's look at it like Route 66. Let's look at it at a historical perspective, and let's put it into that pot instead of worrying about the maintenance and things like that, because that's your job, is to maintain these highways. I know we were asking for, at one time we were looking at the possibility of giving us these little flashing stoplights, because we were told that people are running through the stoplight. Well, let's get some of these flashing stoplights. Well, then there's maintenance. But you have, within your department, you have maintenance people assigned to signage. That's their job, and so I really have trouble with this issue. I think we need to maybe focus on different areas, and business too is very important to our business, and a lot of businesses that have been in this community and the region, and by the way, paying a lot of taxes to the state and over the years, and I think we need to, I am personally not for it. One other thing that we don't think about, we think about snow removal and those types of things. But and Trent touched on it, and it's coming up again. What happens with the beet harvest and harvest in general? There's a lot of mud and a lot of dirt that goes onto the road, and then it gets scraped over to the sides, and then eventually through Mother Nature, ends up down in the bottom of the ditch, the silt. And that's one of the things that the city is going to be responsible for if they take the jurisdiction of that road. The state does an excellent job of cleaning those ditches, and it's probably within a year or two, maybe even next year, who knows, timing that it needs to be done again. They come in with a backhoe, they use their trucks. It's a project, and they get drainage. That's our sewer, or our what do you call it, groundwater drainage. Goes into the ditches, and it actually goes into the river. But if I'm not mistaken, and I'd have to clarify that with our water and light bill, but we get charged for what do you call that? Water mitigation, or but it's on our water and light bill, and we get charged every month for that. And but the state takes care of that. That as far as the 10 million is concerned, that's the carrot. There's the carrot, and I can see the issue being, that's fine and dandy, and over mill and overlay, and then the 10 mil gets swallowed up, and it ends up elsewhere, and then there's no money for maintenance. And snow removal, we get, the state comes in, I tip my hat. We're the first, that road is open. 2, 3, doesn't matter. In the morning, it's open. And it's cleared very professionally, and I'm not going to say bad things about the city, but that's not going to happen. They can't take care of 22nd now. And we have, between us and Mayo's, we have we call it Bertha. It's a big snow drift that comes across, and they whip that out of there, and sometimes they have to come in with with a big blower and toss it over into the field, basically. But it gets done. I just can't see the city does not want that road. It's a heavy use. There's a lot of heavy traffic on there. And yes, there is a lot of traffic. I'm out there, especially during beet harvest. I'm out there 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. There is traffic, not only truck traffic, but there's cars and pickups and vehicles, and it's a major road into our city, and it needs to be kept by the state, and we need to quit going to these types of meetings. Enough is enough. Thank you.
President. So here I am as a property owner in that corridor. It probably is awkward for MnDOT to, on one hand, kind of be told some things you could do better, and then on the other hand, to be said, but we want you to keep the road. It's a funny little dichotomy right there. And yet it is a reminder that in some ways you're doing it well. And I know what you're doing right now on Business 2 is you're prioritizing maintenance on that against all of your other trunk highways, all your other highway systems. It has to hit the priority. As for maybe the surface breaks down or there's so much settlement that you have an unacceptable little swale right there, whatever. It's in that system. It's prioritized against all your other miles, and it's very well taken care of. Is it a brand new road? No. But is anybody breaking up their vehicle, cutting tires, losing struts and shocks on? No, it's a good road. It's a solid road. It always has been. You came to us with an offer for a big project, a lot of cash, and would have made the road really nice right now for all of us that own businesses along there. And that's the upside. We could say as businesses and trucks coming in and out of our place, yeah, that brand new road would look great. And then we have to weigh that against, could we have an assessment attached to our property somewhere in the future? And that probability does exist. And so we as property owners in there just have to weigh those two alternatives and ask which way we want to go. But I'd join the group that says, it hasn't been perfect. Would we wish it was a little more of an urban section through there? Of course. And yet for the road that it is, for the heavy traffic that it gets, it's a good road. It's a really good road. Serves well as a gateway to our community, like you're saying. Would we like to maybe increase some lighting, maybe open it up for better visibility coming in? Absolutely. And we can probably negotiate that stuff going forward. But again, I'll just say thanks for keeping it up the way that you have. We know if it ever comes to the point of deeper maintenance, y'all will schedule that in and it'll be done. So that's my 2 cents as a property owner.
Anybody else have anything?
I don't think I need the microphone. I just have a simple question. And I've been a long ways away from city government and state aid. I know it's a very complicated picture. And I think, Steve, it's your job to educate these people about state aid money, where it comes from, how it gets to the city, and how those roads are designated for that state aid money. The money that you're seeing that's in this project coming from state aid in the future is money that would have come to East Grand Forks anyway, if I understand the program. It has nothing to do with what the value of the trade back is.
Well, the amount of state aid that we receive, it is based on our mileage. So, yes. We would increase our overall state aid mileage by 1.6 miles.
Couldn't you put 1.6 miles someplace else in this city? That's the question.
No, because only 20% of our city mileage can be state aid. And so we're pretty much at that max. But being this is basically a turn back, we would be allowed to add that to our total mileage.
Okay, now let's take a bridge south of us, regardless of the location.
Yeah.
Can't tell me there's not going to be a need for state aid money coming back, whether you come up Reinhardt, whether you come up...
We're going to need all kinds of money for that one. We're going to need all kinds of money.
All kinds of money, but they're going to need all the state aid money that you can get. And your system, he just got through telling you, is choked right now. So it's not like getting as much money as you think you are, because you already have it. That's all I have to say.
Anybody else have anything they have a question on?
I was involved in this particular tract that we're business to in 1955, but I think what you really have to do here, you have a conflict, and you're talking just state aid. What you need is a special law to take care of both the city and the group out there going towards Crookston. And it's done all the time. You've got flexibility. The new governor has said that he wants to take and have a good highway system. And I think if you bring them into the thing real early before the legislature meets, see what you can do. You shouldn't take and put the city in an awkward position, because the problem is, there's another problem. If we're taking 4th Street, the snow removal, our city moves snow removal in an excellent manner. We open up Demers Avenue to 4th. We try to get the River Road opened early because we have Good Samaritan up there that runs up we run our fire equipment and rescue vehicles to save a lot of lives up there. Here we have different problems also, but I think everybody should get involved and work together. You know, it's an amazing thing what happens in government. They find a solution when people start indicating how it affects them, how it affects people. Now, nothing's impossible, and there will be more money, but if you're just going to rely on state aid, everybody's going to be unhappy and dissatisfied. And these people, we have 3, 4, 5 major businesses plus a number of warehouses out there. There's been discussion like this on the stoplights and so forth. We have billions of dollars that are coming also out of the sugar factory. It's the only thing that's stabilizing agriculture in Minnesota and North Dakota in this area. But I think that's what you've got to do. This guy here, running the snow removal and public works, he can tell you how important it is. We open up the whole city. We do an excellent job. We take our equipment, we have pushers on it, and we open it up. We open up so everybody can do their normal things, go to school, go to work, go to church, whatever it may be, and then we haul the snow out to down by the old railroad bridge, and we have big parking lots over here. We stack some of it there. But you've got an opportunity. You've got a new governor. Let's use them. And this isn't a political issue. It's an economic issue. And I think that it surprised everybody. You might come up and have everybody pretty much 100% satisfied. That's my assertion. Like I say, I'm very familiar with it, the whole thing. And I've been involved in the downtown deal in early 1953, down by the bridge when State's Theater burnt. So, but I think that's your answer. And I think you should try to do it. Now, what do you think about that, Bob? We've had a little politics before. We got things in East Grand Forks. And it's interesting, most people, when they got done, they didn't know who was a Democrat and a Republican. We got it worked out. Well, we've been still trying to teach you that, haven't we? behind that table up there. And they've got the mentality to understand what somebody's trying to do. And they have the old card shuffle game that's being offered to you right now. It looks very good on the surface, but when you weigh it all out, it might not be what you think it is.
The governor's going to be up here very shortly up to the tech school because they're doing some expansion and improvement there. It'd be a good chance to get together, and I think we can get it solved, and everybody can be smiling, hopefully a little after Christmas.
Okay. Thanks, Henry. I don't know if anybody else just wants to come up and ask questions of the engineers, or if they want to say something, by all means, come up and look at the map, ask some questions. If you don't want to stand up and talk in front of everybody, it's fine. I think maybe just move into the open house section of it where you can just come up and, who? Well, besides Dale. No, just kidding. Dale.
Can I ask a couple questions?
You go ahead.
I'm a little bit confused on this $10,500,000 that we're talking about. One guy's telling us it's going into an account, in a road account that we can use down the road. And one guy's telling us that they'll give us a check for $10,500,000. I can't see the state giving anybody a check for $10,500,000. If they give us one, they're going to have to be crooks and thief for everybody else one. I just don't see that happening. So I don't know where that's coming from, that they're going to give us cash, a check. That makes no sense to me why they would do that.
Well, there was basically money set aside through this jurisdictional transfer to allow this, and so basically we had two options. We could totally reconstruct the entire corridor, and MnDOT would pay for that project, or if we would decide that we don't want to reconstruct it, we can decide on, let's say, a $10.5 million lump sum payment, then the city would receive that dollar amount.
Right. The dollars are, it's not our district dollars, it doesn't come out of our district dollars that are allocated to maintain our trunk highway system that's in the district. It's a separate pot of money that the state has set aside, taken off the tops for these types of projects to say, if you were to say yes, we agree to this, we would give you what would be equivalent of a reconstruct of the road, because it's a system that we would never look at reconstructing with our own district dollars. And so that's where the $10 million, whatever the estimate is for the reconstruct would be. But if it maintains under our jurisdiction, it's not a classification of a road that we would ever reconstruct. In fact, we're not reconstructing the majority of our own roads because we just don't have the dollars to spread that around. We're talking about a pie that's not big enough, and so there's not a real, I agree with a lot of the group, there's not a lot of good arguments as far as why the city would take it over, but that's how the process would work. The money's out there, we have it available for these types of projects, and it's really up to the community. I mean, we're not forcing it on the community at all. We're just saying this is an option for you. Consider this, if there's, like Steve said, there's advantages and there's disadvantages, and you have to weigh that out. But we're just here making the offer, saying that it's an option for you to do whatever you want with the money, to make the road better, use it for another part of your state aid system, whatever the case may be. But that's kind of what we're talking about here. It has nothing to do with, that's just cutting your check. It goes in your state aid account, and then you can use it for other state aid systems. You can use it for this system. You can do kind of what.
Okay, so the $10,500,000, that's an estimate today.
Right.
If we don't do that thing for 2 years, how much is it going to be? It isn't going to go down, and we know that.
Yeah.
It's only going to go up.
Yeah. And again, that's a number. I mean, that is not set in stone yet at this point. I mean, that's just a number that, for some additional discussions we've had with MnDOT, is that dollar amount. Again, if we wanted to continue down that road, we'd have to make sure we define the scope of work. We're all on the same page as far as what that scope of work entails, and probably look at some type of escalation. Because like you're saying, I mean, I think these funds right now are available like 2021 through 2024 or something.
Yeah,
so yeah, I mean, we're 2 to 5 years out there yet before we even do a project. So
If they're there set aside available for us, why can't they just use it and do it?
Because there's earmarked for this certain types of things, and that's across the state, not just
not just in District 2, it's all over this.
Okay, so we can understand how they're not, I mean, I'm a property owner, how they're getting something for this. The minute that you do the jurisdictional transfer, they start saving money on maintenance. They'll make up that 10 million somewhere in the future. Might take 15 years, might take 20 years, might take 30 years, but they stop paying maintenance on that road the day the jurisdictional transfer takes place, and they start racking up savings against what they paid us. That's their upside, is long-term reduced maintenance cost in MnDOT.
Exactly.
But we have the maintenance costs.
Yeah, it shifts to us.
But that's where East Grand Forks, as they're saying, cannot afford to do it. Now, if you want to prioritize roads, it's my understanding that there's 90-year-old concrete underneath that out there. That's what we've been told. That should tell somebody right there that this road maybe needs to be done sooner than later. In my book, that's the way I look at it. Do you know anything about 90-year-old concrete underneath that road?
I don't know if it goes out the whole way. It might just be over by the railroad tracks and by 5th Street. That's what I've heard. There might be some concrete under there, but I don't think it goes all the way out to business, out to Highway 2. I mean, it could.
Yeah, right.
I never heard that it was that concrete all the way out there.
Well, I know we have concrete under Highway 2 between Crooks and East Grand Forks and other sections that were built in the 20s. And yeah, you're right. I've rebuilt a lot of those things. It's junk. We got north of 220s bad. But like I say, the pie is only so big, and you have to try to maintain all your system under a certain level. And so we spend $100 in one segment, we're not going to have anything for anything else. So it's a balance. And from a state aid standpoint, the state aid dollars came out of the same pot of money that we get our dollars from. It all comes out of the trunk highway fund balance. And so you're kind of shifting dollars, and hopefully, we're looking at who would be more efficient at servicing the road. Is it more efficient for the locals to do it than us? And that's the question we're asking. And that's a question that you have to answer that. I mean, we don't know that. We know we do the best we can. I think we do a good job. But is it more efficient for the locals to do it over time? Would the system save dollars by doing that? Maybe. That's why we're having the conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Gross. So when you talk about, Trent talked a little bit about the water line out there. So in the $10 million estimate, are you talking about keeping the road at that height or dropping that road down, putting storm sewer in there so they don't have water, widening? I mean, is that all part of the 10 million, or is this going to be or does it just look like replacing the road the way it is and then going from there? So all of a sudden it would just be a rebuilt asphalt road from wherever the concrete stops out, and then we're responsible to take care of that. Is that what the 10 million basically in your mind? If you were to come in here tomorrow and do this project, would it look exactly the same?
Well, that's
other than
we have to agree to that scope for it. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, it isn't going to be 10.5 or 10 million bucks to put concrete curb and gutter, storm sewer from 2 to here. There's no way. We can't do 20th Street for, so.
$1.5 million.
Would have been pretty much constructing it as it is today. I think we would look at urbanizing it, maybe another couple blocks as you go east. I think we'd figured urbanizing it up to about 8th Avenue. But then from 8th out to Highway 2, it would stay basically a rural section. That's one thing we did talk about, is if the city had control of it, we could look at potentially urbanizing it and putting in storm sewer. MnDOT has said, with this scope of work, they're not going to pay that additional cost to have it urbanized and put in storm sewer. So, it's something we can look at as part of the project, but then those additional funds would have to be picked up by, the city, the residents, business owners. So again, to answer your question, Chad, $10.5 million is pretty much reconstructing it more or less what we have there today.
Okay.
Mr. Gregoire.
You made a comment about the old concrete that's out there. When they redid County Road 17 to tie into Business 2, it wasn't concrete there. It was called black dirt is what the road was put on top. It was whatever fill was available at the time when they built those roads. So the substructure underneath those roads is not suitable for just constantly putting a mill on. All you're doing is putting a Band-Aid on something, and you're throwing good money on top of bad money that's already been invested.
Yep, we know that, and it's a continuous vicious cycle because we don't have enough. If we put the dollars, you're talking about $10.5 million, wouldn't even touch what you want in that stretch. I mean, that's what we're facing every day. So we put those dollars in there. We only have about a $40 million program in the entire district to maintain all the roads in our district, which we have 4,000 miles close to in the district. About $40 million a year that we have to deal with that. And so again, putting $10 million, $20 million in a few mile stretch of road, that'll decimate the rest of our system. And so that's why we continue to just have to do surface repairs and try to keep it into a certain level of service. And it's unfortunate, but that's why we're talking, we're funded out of gas tax revenue, motor vehicle license sales, and motor vehicle, what's that? Well, there's some excise tax coming in now too, but generally it's the motor licensing tabs and motor vehicle sales tax, and your gas tax. Gas tax is the biggest revenue driver for us. Those are all constitutionally dedicated to transportation. That's our only source of revenue. There was a shift out of the general fund about 5 years ago, maybe, that motor vehicle sales parts come into there too. $400 million a year statewide. So point being is that, again, I agree with what you're saying. I do, but when your pie is only so big, you have to manage that the best you can to try to keep the entire system at a certain level of service. And we have targets for all the different classifications of roads. This is a lower classification road, so the higher classification road, like your Demers Avenue, which is a principal arterial, we would maintain that at a higher level of service than we would something like a business too. We have 317, we have 220 North Oslo, those types of roads. I mean, we still have to maintain them to a minimum level of service, which is still higher than a lot of local criteria. But again, those are all things that get thrown in the system and are competing against all these other roads. And so we try to balance out the best we can too. So I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm just trying to tell you you're right. These roads, some of these roads are shot. I've been there was a resident construction engineer in Thief River for almost 20 years, and I rebuilt a lot of roads in this area. And you dig that old concrete up, there's nothing underneath it. There's no gravel, there's nothing. It's on junk, and it takes a lot of money. You have to core out the whole road. You have to haul in all that gravel. I mean, it would cost far more dollars than we have allocated to us to try to rebuild the entire system. So that's my soapbox, I guess.
Wayne, did you have something to say?
Just, I forgot to mention too, and I'm not trying to dig up old wounds, but the one thing that I would be against is shaving that road down, simply because we are on the wet side of the dike, Mr. Andrew, and we actually count on that road to a certain extent to keep the Red Lake River from coming into our property. So that would be another doggone issue, son of a gun anyway. But the business too right now kind of helps us out.
That's correct.
So just that.
Okay. I apologize. I have to actually go, but I can get my information to Steve, and he can send it out. If everybody has any questions, you can certainly get a hold of me or Lou as well. Again, this isn't something we're trying to force down the city's throat. It was just a proposal, an opportunity with some dollars for projects like these jurisdictional transfers, and we're just reaching out to the community to see if there's any interest, and if there's not, well, we'll just continue on it and maintain it the best we can. So.
Thank you for coming.
Yep, you bet.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Anything to add?
I guess, any other questions? So again, like Council President said, if you guys have any questions, we'll stick around, answer any questions you have. Again, I think the council, they got what they kind of needed from you guys moving forward to help them make decisions. So again, appreciate you guys coming out tonight. Too often do we hold these meetings and no one shows up. So it's actually good to see you guys here and ask questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Lights over here.